What's up, WWE Champions Universe? Welcome to Champions Chat, the fastest growing podcast dedicated to the WWE Champions mobile game. I'm Rusty Graves, the Heartbreak Kid, and with me, as always, the rocker, Marty Jannetty. Lee Brown, what's up, Lee?
Come on. I thought for sure you were going to say Big Daddy Cool or something.
What?
You stick me with the Jannetty in this equation.
Yeah, you are clearly Marty Jannetty. You're younger, you're vibrant, you're better looking. I think Marty Jannetty was all those things to Shawn Michaels, wasn't he?
Okay, so here's the thing. Weird stuff to start out with, but I used to have a Rockers poster when I was, of a certain age. Growing up, like
hanging above your bed, kind of above your bed.
It was in my room. And my mom used to always walk in and go, "Oh, that's Shawn Michaels. He's so good looking." And even back then, I was like, "Mom, I don't feel comfortable with this."
And so for me to call myself Shawn Michaels,
I should tell my mom and see if she. Never mind. We're not going there. We're not going there.
Well, what's going on, Lee?
So we have a very special episode for you today. Today we have with us Mherex Gaming on the podcast. What's going on, Mherex?
I'm just really curious right now. Didn't Michaels put Jannetty through a glass window?
He did. They were the top tag team in the WWF at the time.
Yeah.
And the heel turn Michaels put the innocent Jannetty. It was a bad guy.
So if you show up to the podcast wearing a leather jacket, I'm gonna do the dodge move as much as I can. Does that make Mherex Brutus Beefcake?
With us today is sensational Queen Sherry Mherex.
Whoa.
Mherex is Sherry.
Most waited for card in the game. That's right.
Times 4 multipliers. Finally have a replacement to Matt for all those players that can maybe get Sherry this weekend. Probably.
Incredible.
Question mark.
Maybe. Possibly.
Crazy good trainer though. Also, as long as you're on the Shawn Michaels thing, so growing up, I had a favorite, and it was Shawn Michaels. I wanted to be rocker Shawn, to be specific.
Yes.
I wanted to be as cool as Shawn. Like, I thought he was the coolest ever, and I wanted to be that cool. So my all-time favorite is Mick Foley, because he's a fat guy that's tough and I can relate. And but my second is Shawn Michaels, and he was my like childhood hero, watching wrestling at Grandpa's in the morning. So it's interesting.
I kind of have on a Mick Foley kind of.
You do.
Oh, you do.
You do.
Yeah.
A lot
you
of
need a
synergy
sock.
today.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Mrs.
And all of us are getting closer to Shawn Michaels' look now than when he was the rocker Shawn. So
one eye closed.
When he takes the cowboy hat off and
poor guy had a stroke.
Mrs. Mherex got me a Socko sock that's autographed by Mankind for Christmas. You know the first thing I did after I opened it? I put it on and I tested it out on the oldest son. He ate Socko.
Oh. Awesome.
The mandible claw in his under his tongue. Oh my gosh.
Merry Christmas.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible.
Memories.
That's incredible. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today, Mherex. And I know we are both Lee and I are so excited to have you because you're somebody who we regularly watch your content, and we have for as long as, I don't know, probably 3 years now, at least. For me, Lee, maybe longer. I don't know how long you've been streaming, but you're somebody that I go to for answers, both in the game and in life. There's sometimes I'll post in your chat, what should I do for dinner? How do I help get my marriage better? How do I, but you're someone that is a trustworthy pillar and an official content creator. So we're so glad you're on with us today.
It's actually, I'm really glad I'm on too. It's really hard for me to commit to a time. And as you guys know, I was later than I wanted to today because of snow. This is exactly my fear of committing to a time, right? Because stuff goes wrong and I don't want to disappoint anyone. So I appreciate that you guys, one, kept asking me, and because I did want to be on, and two, for having me on and sharing this time with you. It's awesome. So I'm super happy to be here. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, that's right. And you get to come on a big milestone for us. Something was just announced that we never would have expected. And so, we've been trying to get you long before that on there, but it's a double special episode for me. Like, this is one for the record books, I think. So thank you for being here.
you're the right
Yeah.
guest to have on today, I think, because it feels like a full circle moment. And for those of you who don't know, if you are wondering what is this special thing they have announced, we have recently been invited, or I don't know, what would you call it, Lee? We've been asked to become content creators for WWE Champions, like on an official level. And so not only are we starting this new journey, but we're starting it with somebody who has kind of shaped and influenced our thought process and our content in the game since we started making it, Mherex. So we're glad you're, again, I keep saying I'm so glad you're here with us, because I'm kind of
Rusty.
I'm kind of fanboying out just a little bit. I'm kind of like I can't contain my excitement that Mherex is here with us. So let's hear from, I'm going to mute, and I just want to hear from you all for the next hour.
well, Mherex, go ahead.
I was just going to say, first, congratulations to you guys. It's freaking awesome. Like, I remember how I felt, you know, I'm similar to you guys. I'm in my 40s. I don't know what I'm doing. I never thought, you know, like, this has got to be an accident, you know. And it was one of the going from not knowing how to do any of that stuff to never making a video to making really bad videos to then being an official like content creator is kind of surreal, and I can only imagine you're feeling similar. So I'm super happy for you guys. I've talked to you a little bit recently, especially like before this and stuff, and you're just good dudes, so I'm super happy for you. And like, enjoy the moment, soak it in, man.
Soak it in, man.
Yeah.
The gift of Jericho. Nice.
I am basking in this moment right now.
Oh, even better. I mean, Jericho's great, but Keith Lee, yes, please. That's awesome. So, all right then, Mherex, let's we don't want this to be about us. This is usually, I mean, anytime we have a guest on, the idea is we want to get some into your head and how'd you get started? What does that look like for you? So, you know, we'll get some other questions going, but just share your story for those who maybe don't know it in our listening audience. You said, you know, you're a man of a certain age. You kind of got started late, but now you're an official content creator, kind of carrying that mantle from, you know, the last generation of content creators. Really, how'd you get started, and what does that look like?
Well, I would say you'd have to go back to childhood, right? And the one thing probably that changed my life forever would be the Nintendo. You know, yeah, that guy right there, right? And, you know, exactly. You just blow in those things and they'll work forever, you know?
People who are only audio are going, what was that weird distracting noise right there? Sorry about that.
No.
Go ahead.
So, you know, I started out with like Mike Tyson's Punch Out, Zelda, Contra. I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a hardcore gamer at that age, you know, just kind of having fun, you know, messing around. And then I would say on the journey would be the PlayStation and Final Fantasy VII. That is the game I would say that turned me into what I would call a real gamer, like a hardcore gamer, like tons of hours playing, and from there devouring every JRPG I could get my hands on during the PlayStation era, kind of the golden era for those style of games, I would say. Final Fantasy Tactics still probably top 3-4 game for me of all time. I remember putting Elder Scrolls Oblivion in the 360 for the first time, coming out of the tunnel, walking over the hill, and seeing the sunset on a city in the distance, and I was hooked. You know, like, these are moments that changed my life in games. KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, my buddy came over for the weekend. We're playing, he wanted to play Sith. So we're playing bad, and I don't like this very much, but whatever. He leaves for the weekend. After the weekend, I keep playing, and I do the worst thing I've ever done in my life. I enslave all of the Wookiees. And I get
and then you find out you're Darth Revan, and you're like,
I get so sick to my stomach, I can't keep playing. So I start over and play Max Light.
Same.
and beat the game that way. But another moment for me where games just were something different, you know, than the normal stuff, right? So I changed careers from Walgreens to Staples, and the guy that trained me was a wrestling fan. I had been out of wrestling watching for a lot of years, and he's like, "Oh, I play this wrestling game," or I was actually saw him playing it. It looked like Candy Crush. I'm like, "What's that, dude?" And he's
Right.
like, "Oh, it's a wrestling game." I'm like, "Nah, it looks like Candy Crush." You know, like with a little bit of disdain, because I'm a real gamer, like I'm playing, you know what I mean, right? Like I don't play
Right.
Candy Crush. I'm cool. And he's like, no, 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 it's wrestlers, they get moves and stuff. And I'm like, well, I used to love wrestling. And then he showed me like, Rock and Mankind and HBK, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. So I went and downloaded it. Did
Nice.
not tell Mrs. Mherex I was downloading it, like, because at this point, I don't even know how she feels about wrestling. Because I had literally, it's probably been 10 years since I watched wrestling. So I'm playing the game and it's kind of fun. And I'm like, man, I haven't watched wrestling in years. So I talked to my boss, my training boss, and he's like, if you're gonna watch, you should really watch the Yes Movement story. Like start
Ooh.
with, because I had Hulu. He's like, start with that. So he tells me when to start, and I start watching. I couldn't stop watching. I probably watched the whole Yes Movement from beginning till WrestleMania in a span of like 3 months, watching as much as I can. Like, all the time. I'm like so into it. By the time Brian wins, even though I didn't watch it live, like that is my favorite WrestleMania moment at this point, because I got so into it. No
Mm.
interruptions, no commercials, just bam, bam, bam. It was amazing. So now I'm like way back into wrestling at this point, right? Because one of the better storylines ever. I love it. My other buddy's like, dude, watch the Cruiserweight Classic on NXT and then watch all of the pay-per-views. Watch the DIY story. Best love story ever told, right? DIY love story. Right, from Yes Movement Daniel Bryan to DIY, then I got Edge coming back live at the Rumble while I'm watching it. I'm jumping up and down out of
Wow.
my chair, screaming so now I'm as deep into wrestling as you can get again. I've rekindled the childhood magic. I love it. I love all of it. The this would never happen. This is ridiculous. Just the best. When wrestling is at its best, there's nothing better to watch. It's not always at its best, but when it is good,
Yeah.
it is so good. Goosebumps, hair raised up, moments like
Yeah.
that. You don't get that on regular TV. So uh I would say all of that kind of leads to the start, right? Being a gamer, loving wrestling as a kid, back into it as an adult, and then you take this game, which on the surface looks like Candy Crush Wrestling, and it gives you the ability to obsess over numbers and builds and possibilities. And you're really, especially at this stage in the game, like earlier on, you're really only limited by your creativity, because like
Right.
so much depended on making 5 matches to create cascades, and like sometimes a row break is more damage, and you're trying to figure out like all these different ways to manipulate the board. When you like choose move guy was the pinnacle, right? Like if I get this choose move guy, I can dominate, because I can set up these cascades, I can do all this stuff. I can cycle my moves. Now we cycle moves with the click of a button. Back then you
Right.
had to set up your cascade to cycle your moves if you couldn't win in one turn, right? There wasn't a lot of turn one wins, so it was super creative, and like all these layers, right? And the more you play, you're like, wow, there's another layer here, there's another layer here. There was blitz where you had to, if you didn't keep low guys, you had no chance at beating blitz. You had to put the
Hmm.
strategic blitz team in. And so
Yeah.
like the more I played, the more I learned, the more fascinated I got. And it was really, I found often like tier lists. Everyone's like, oh, look at the tier list. And I'm like, okay, so I look at this tier list. I build Anvil at striker. To this day, to this day, the absolute worst decision I've ever made with my roster at the time. He was
Nice.
random, and if you guys know me at all, I hate random.
Cascade
always,
King. That's
yeah,
right.
always hated random. My gems wouldn't end up in the right spot. So that was the last time I ever used a tier list. Like they're great, like if you want an idea, but just because somebody says they're good, including me, doesn't mean they're
Yeah.
good, right? You need to
Yeah.
like, and so like that was probably, I would say, the start of me wanting to know for me, right? Like so there's going to be a lot of levels here. So went from like just enjoying the game, finding out there's all these layers, wanting to know more, um feeling like I got conned on a tier list and I needed to be smarter because I didn't do enough of my own research. This is what I get for believing people.
Sorry, Twilight Bats.
Right?
No.
No, I don't think it wasn't their tier list actually.
Oh, sorry, the
This was
Haven.
yeah, it was think it was theirs probably.
Hey, they were great for the time.
They were
you know,
they
you just got to understand what they're for.
exactly. They're a guideline. They help a ton of people. At some point, I may even do a tier list, and I will name it TEAR because, you know, but there should be a resource, not a be all end all. And I found that out the hard way. So from then on, I was super invested in my roster. And just the deeper I got, the more I wanted to know. Like I could never get enough knowledge about the game because I want back then resources. I'm sure you guys remember. If you made one bad mistake, if you used coin and TP at the wrong time, you weren't getting good value. It messed you up. Sometimes you couldn't do the right stuff for like months, right? Like you've been saving months to take this one guy. Yeah, I couldn't at the start. You couldn't even beat the daily tours because you had to level up a trickster to beat the trickster node, and you needed the right trickster. I see Rusty shaking his head. He remembers the pain. Yeah,
you're unearthing
Remember when
some
we had
really
to do Undertaker's
painful
daily.
Oh,
yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Rusty.
I was to say you're unearthing some really painful memories of this game right now.
Rip that band-aid off.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing I'll say though, with the pain comes value, right? Like, so if I just go out on the street and pick up a $20 bill, that's awesome. That's a bonus, right? That's great. But it's not the same as taking that $20 bill and buying something as it is if I had earned it and then bought it, right? Like so maybe I'm one of those weird people where the journey makes it mean more. Maybe not everybody's like that. But to me, like if the journey is hard and it's a struggle, I find a lot of value in getting there, right? Like what did I learn? What did I have to go through? Like this character means a lot to me because it wasn't easy.
I think it's a Miley Cyrus song about climbing a mountain. Is not. I mean, anyway, let me go back to mute.
You came in like a wrecking ball right there. I like that.
Well, I was thinking the song is always gonna be an uphill battle. Anyway, I'm not gonna sing it.
No, that's perfect. So if you guys have never heard the story of how I met Zandel at a Miley concert, that's a story for another day.
Shout out to Zandel.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, like, and it just seemed like literally the base game, the stuff you could do, it didn't make sense that this was Candy Crush Wrestling because it's Candy Crush Wrestling, but I can do so much more than just swipe 5 gems to make a match, right? Or 3 gems. And from there, I remember watching videos on Superstars. Do you guys remember when Trickster Matt came out? When Matt Hardy came out, he's Trickster, right?
Woken.
Woken Matt. And you watch the video that came out, and I don't even know if that was just a Scopely posted video or a CC video. I can't even remember. It might have been like at that point, maybe they didn't even have CCs making official videos. I don't know. But in the video, he looked insane. Absolutely insane. In reality, that was an extremely like cherry-picked moment, and he couldn't do a lot of that. I didn't get him at the time because he was ridiculously expensive, but I did get him later. Right. And I had friends. And you can't get him now. That's another bummer. When guys are no longer in the game. Then probably. Or doesn't work for that other company, right?
Right.
So that bothered me, and then I would watch other videos that content creators did, and it's no knock on them, right? They just didn't use trainers I had. Right. So I couldn't relate. And then a lot of times I noticed there were builds that looked like I could try, but they weren't being tried. And I'm like, well, I wonder how this build would work. And nobody even said anything about it. So I started thinking like, maybe this would be cool, like to have guys leveled up, use them, or level my own guys up. This guy looks really good on paper. I wonder if I can find somebody to talk to about if they've tried this with them. So, you know, just finding more people excited about the game, start talking builds and nerding out on builds, like theoretical builds, and then like try to find people that had them, find out what Discord is. I had always hated Discord. Like, it's felt so clunky when I first started using it. Get into Discord, okay, some nerds in my faction talk about builds. I start talking to them. I'm a fellow nerd. We're good guys talking about builds and wrestling and Candy Crush and Men in Tights. What? You know, and,
Tight.
yeah, exactly. So from there, there was actually a moment, and I will forever be grateful to him for this, and I've said it before. Um, I had messaged Davey D about a video he did, and I mean, it was probably one of those annoying messages that, you get, hey, did you ever think about trying this? And you're like, yeah, I did that in the video. Or,
Right.
yeah, I tried it and it was really bad. Or sometimes it's no, I actually didn't try it. That's a great idea. But I sent him one of those, and he was awesome about it. And he talked to me a little bit, and then I got excited because I'm a nerd, right? So I started telling him, well, did you think about trying this or this or this or this and all this stuff? And he's like, I know some people that are nerds just like you that love talking about this stuff. Let me get you into this group, right? So he gets me into this Discord group with a lot of guys. I'm sure you guys know Two Bob. So Two Bob was in there. Um, I'm gonna forget some of the names, and it's gonna be terrible. But like Ben B1, I don't know if you guys know Ben. Maybe not
Mm-mm.
Ben. Some guys that don't play anymore. Kenny, Venge, just a bunch of guys that have been playing a long time and talked about the game a lot. So it was basically like a super nerd group, and builds started getting amped up to another level in theory crafting, and we would spend hours and hours a week just talking about what could work, who to get. From there, it was like, how can we do better in events and stuff? Davey was also in this chat. Um, and I had mentioned to him, like, dude, I think it's really cool you do videos. At this point, I think I'm like late 30s, right?
Yeah.
I told him, like, I've always wanted to make videos and stuff for games I played, but like, I'm old, I don't have any video editing skills, no knowledge, so it's not something I'd ever do, but I think it's so cool you do that. It's something I've always wanted to do. And he's like, so what's stopping you? And I'm like, well, I don't know how. And he's like, okay, how are you going to learn? And I'm like, well, he's like, you got a lot of good ideas about the game. You should just make a video. Huh.
Nice.
Well, I guess why not make a video? So I made a really horrible video, right? And then I made another really horrible video. And then every horrible video I made, I tried to make a less horrible video. And, get better at the video parts and what do I want to see. And I think, if you guys know Donjay, I think if I recall right, Donjay said the first video of mine he ever watched that was a big deal is, so Wolfpack Sting from the Showdown store. You
Yes,
could
yes.
get him by grinding, playing a bunch of Showdown, buying him when he came up, right? Like, through hard work, you could get him. I got Wolfpack Sting. Back then, techs were the most paywalled character. He was my best tech. Took him up, leveled him, did a video showing a couple different builds I liked for him. And that was, if I remember right, that's why Donjay said he started watching me, was because of my Wolfpack Sting video. And
Nice.
I found that there were other people like me that liked nerding out on builds and all these different possibilities. So I started really focusing in on that. Like Dango, I think I made a bunch of early videos on. Guys like that, people carrying my roster that maybe weren't heavily paywalled that you might have, because at this time I did not have the roster I had now. I didn't max my first MLC until Trickster Edge. I think, like a lot of people, Trickster Edge might have been the first one. It was a little bit easier than some of the previous ones. Before that, we had a lot of the vaults with like Acro, Ray, Becky, Rowan. They were super hard to pull the vault guys. If you guys even remember back that far, they were really difficult. So you know, I just really started focusing on these guys that could be good, that weren't necessarily weekend big budget cards that I had with trainers I had, and more people started watching. And then, Davey kept encouraging me. The best advice he ever gave me was, don't try to be the next Gerson, don't try to be the next Davey, be the first Mherex.
Yeah.
And like, I felt like there was a real lacking of like really super in-depth looking at superstars, and then also events. Back then, events were tailored a lot differently than now. So I did a lot of breakdowns on events. This is how far you can get without spending. If you spend like $20 on this event, you're going to get like 3, 4 more milestones. It's really good value because I was a low spender, probably at that point. The most I ever spent, as long as we're on this, and I know a lot of people are curious, and it doesn't bother me to talk about, the most I ever spent on a single weekend was Sacco, obviously Mankind being my favorite. I spent $280 on his weekend release. That's the most I've ever spent on a weekend, right? The most I think I've ever spent in a month was the Rocky month because I was having a ton of fun.
Tech Rocky? Or no,
yeah,
sorry,
the
Rocky
Rocky
Balboa.
event. Yeah, the
Rocky
event.
Balboa.
I did not get Tech Rocky. I got the rest and I got the moment,
Right.
and I overspent for the moment, but I wanted it and I wasn't lucky, so I spent more than I wanted to. That's the most I probably spent in a month was that month, but the most I ever spent in one weekend was Mankind Sacco.
Wow.
Anyway,
Well, he famously has the move where he kicks you in the groin and you do
yes,
bleed damage, which is my favorite
appropriate,
bleed. I'm like,
very
oh
appropriate. I gave a lot of nut shots in this game with him. He was my showdown
over
guy
and over
for
with the plates and recycle.
Yeah, he was my showdown guy for a long time. So, you know, like I just really started focusing on that. I had been in a mid-20s faction. I still think of this faction as home. Victorious family, Victorious Secrets, and they have like 3. We're pointing, but unmute, sir.
I was in Victorious. Like that was like my home faction. Like
how long ago?
Gosh, when I came back to Champions in 2020, I was with Lee, but pre 2020, basically from when I started the game, like to Mherex and Smits and me, like these are like my BFFs on Discord, and I was in Victorious. What was the top one was Secrets. I was in Angels. I was on the top. I was on like the top half of Angels during my time there. And then I would get called up and we would do things to try. I remember like the Acro X chasing Acro X Pac.
I was in it during X Pac.
We would have been in the same faction together.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Reunited.
Yep. I was so good. X Pac, I was fairly new in Secrets at that point. Like that was my first event with being in Secrets. I was in the lowest one prior to that. So I started out in Snow Goons for just a little while. Yeah. And then my buddy got me into Secrets when I could get into Victorious when I could get in, and I got in their bottom faction.
Was it Hugger? Were you in Hugger's Club? Like
I think I was to start. Yeah.
I'm serious. This is blowing my mind right now. This is blowing my mind. That we were in multiple of the same faction and on the tree together, even leveling up around this at the same time period. I still message Schmitz. I still talk to the guy. I still
talk to Schmitz and Roman.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Roman was in Huggers. I invited Roman into Victorious.
Yeah.
This is insane.
It's awesome, man. So yeah.
I'm gonna mute.
Okay.
Mind blown.
So X-Pac was, I think, the first event I had worked up to Secrets, right? I had grown my roster like pretty fast. I was playing a ton because grinding really paid off back then. I mean, like it was all you really could do a lot of times. And I didn't have the biggest roster, but like Blitz, where it was all about grinding, like I would post super high Blitz scores, right? So and I think shortly after that we went through the merger with
Dynasty. Dynasty. It was terrible.
That was terrible.
It was horrible.
And that was horrible. Yes, we'll just agreed. Enough said. Agreed.
This is proof for those of you out there like BS. These guys are not. There is no shared history together. Like this is that only. Yeah, and we had no prior conversation.
2 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right?
Like this is crazy. The Dynasty thing. It was
that terrible. Was a mess, dude. It was. Yeah. So we when Dynasty left and we came back to Secrets, I got much more involved in leadership at that point. I actually tracked the spreadsheets for a while, a little bit, helped with that. That was one of the things I did. And I was our big Blitz guy, a lot of times doing 4 times the required amount in Blitz. And like I said, Edge was the first event I had maxed. Probably wasn't too long after this, what we're talking about here. And I remember for a while there was a bunch of events that they made very difficult to max the solo unless you were in like a top 10, 15 faction. It wasn't really going to happen. And Sasha Banks was the only chase I missed in like, well, that's the only chase I've missed since Edge actually, is Sasha Banks. And that was because the faction wasn't placing high enough. And at this point, like I said, I was doing like 4 times, and I was just starting to get into this content stuff, and I felt like it was too much. Like to try and keep track of spreadsheets, if I was going to try and grow the content, have a Discord server, do all this stuff, I couldn't do it all. So I had to give something up, and either it was give up like weekend superstar, or I mean month-long chases, because that's the only thing I was getting back then. I wasn't getting weekend superstars. It was just the
Right.
chase was everything, right? My roster was built around the chase.
Yeah.
Free cards
Still
weren't
where
good.
I am. A lot of people are.
Yeah. And like if you didn't get the chase, you didn't get anything worth anything that month, right? Because you were just
Right.
getting old stuff, and like without the chase, I had nothing, right? So, and I didn't get Sasha, and I was like, do I leave? And that was the hardest decision I've ever made, to leave. I felt really crappy, truthfully. I still feel like Victorious is my home faction. You know, I've been in 1% for a long time. I was in um TNM for like a year and a half, 2 years, but Victorious will always be home. Like if I ever retire from the game, I want to ask him to put me in Huggers or something like long term, just because that's like that literally it's my home,
Right.
right? So it was
What's
the
what
hardest.
Rusty and I've said about the Black Pearl? Like, if we ever play at a different level again, or whatever we, I mean, that's been our home. Toxic Mafia is amazing, and we love it here. Just the Black Pearl was. I was there for
Yeah,
4 years. Like,
you can't yeah, it's just that's is you invest a lot, effort, energy, time, friends, you know what I mean? Like, so it was really
yeah,
hard to leave. And I went to Team Slam. They were like top 5-ish, I think, back then. Wasn't even sure I'd be able to be in a top faction that high, right? Because I've just been we're mid 20s, and uh it turned out it was easier because I wasn't trying to do more than my fair share, right? And I wasn't tracking things. So it was actually much easier. It was, I was doing more, and it was harder to be in a lower faction, as weird as that sounds.
yeah.
So I had time to start focusing on content. It was this point, really started doing that. I think did my first like YouTube stream. Most of the content creators at that point, that they weren't really streaming on YouTube. Somewhere shortly after this, or as much like there, I think Gerson still was at this point. DJ was
Yeah.
always the Twitch guy. But there wasn't a lot of streaming, right? So I started streaming for like 3 people. Fish and Bomber, I think, were always on my first streams. Shout out to Fish and Bomber if they're listening. Um, and just really supportive, and a lot of Team Slam guys and some Victorious guys would show up, and slowly over a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of videos, it grew. And then like Broken and Punisher both really advocated for me to Furpo after a certain point. Punisher said it was the feud prep videos that I did back then, because I had a mid-tier lineup, and I'd talk about who I'd use, if line bonuses were worth it, trying not to go too big, things like that. Um, that he really was a niche that he hadn't seen videos like that. And event I started focusing on really big on the event stuff and the breakdown stuff, just trying to approach it more analytical than some of the other stuff. And they said this Furpo guy had heard my name, and he had told him about him, and he was thinking about it, but I needed to do more videos and get more followers. So like I'm trying to do all these videos and get more followers, and it was starting to get a little discouraging, right? Because like I was looking at the some of the official content creators, one of them in particular, no longer a content creator, but like I posted more videos and had more views than him. He had like
Hmm.
3,000 subscribers, but I posted more videos that month, and I had more views. And I took a screenshot of my month and his month, and I sent it to Punisher, and I'm like, if this isn't good enough, I don't, what do I need? What do I ask him, because I wasn't talking to him. What do I need to do beyond this? Because I don't know how much bigger I can get, because I'm getting like 10 subscribers a month, you know what I mean? And I don't know how many he wants, but it's going to take me forever. If it's going to
Right.
take forever, let me know, because then I'll quit worrying about it right now. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, because it was kind of, once I have something in my mind, I like to strive for things. You guys probably have figured that out based on some of the earlier stuff. I like goals. I like achieving things. I like doing new things and stretching myself, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Again, it's the journey. That's
Right.
for me, a lot of times means more than the end result. And so that, I think, is what did it, because when he saw the numbers and stuff and he's like, okay, this guy did this many videos, it's a different kind of thing, he'd be a good fit. So yeah, that's kind of what got me there. And that's what I've always tried to focus on. I always had an issue, like I said earlier, with a lot of the other previews. I felt like they weren't good for me. So what I've done with my content is try to make stuff that I wanted to see when I wasn't making content, right? Like, so if I look at a character, I take it a preview like it's super important to me. Sometimes they're easy because I've done so many. Sometimes it just flows, right? Like some cards, I put it in, play them, and everything clicks. Like I'm okay, like this build is good, this build is good, simple. And then if I don't know if you guys remember Acro Snoop, my preview on him, if you don't know, I played him for like 13 or 14 hours before I recorded the preview, because
Wow.
there was something there and I knew it, but I couldn't make it work and it made me mad. So I played literally all day and into the night over and over and over. And I was like so close. And finally I got it. I'm like, this is so stupid. Why didn't I see this right away? It's so obvious, right? When I got it, it was obvious. And like, so I made it a thing for me. And I talked to Mrs. Mherex. She's been like really good advice, even though we didn't get into how she can't stand wrestling, but is super supportive of me. She, because I used to talk to her, right? Because like one thing you'll find is Champions is very time sensitive, right? When you make
Right.
content, it's in the moment. If you don't get content out in a timely fashion, it's no longer relevant very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if there's a weekend tour that you need to use a guy, if you don't drop that tour right away, by the time you drop the video, everyone's done the tour. They don't need help with it anymore,
Right.
right? So, same thing with the preview. There's a pressure a lot of times to put it out first because a lot of people will watch one video and quit. They won't watch a
Right.
second. And so I had to decide early on, do I want to think short term or think long term? What's more important to me? And I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? They're going to take what they take. I'm never going to
Mhm.
release a preview until I'm happy with it. I don't care if it's an hour of gameplay before I record, or 3 hours, or 2 days. And I set that for myself. And there have been times when I promise you I did not want to stick to that. But like when I would post a video and it'd be like 30 minutes, 4 different builds, all this time, and I'd watch some of the other ones, I'm like, man, this is so much more in depth and no one is watching it. Like, what do I
Right.
gotta do, right? Like, and stuff. And I stuck to my guns and stuck with it, and slowly that growth started happening, and then word spreads, and then you find out that what actually happens is a lot of times people watch a video right away, then they forget about the character till they get it.
Right.
And then they come back and watch your video because they know that
Right.
you took a lot of time and you ran multiple builds with multiple trainers. So they're like, okay, Mherex did 3 builds that I can't do anything with, but this one he ran, I know what it would look like on my account, right?
Right.
And this one he said wouldn't scale well, or this one is move damage, and I can run these trainers, right? So I tried to start looking at it like that and really focusing on that. And hopefully my goal is that there's something for like everyone in a preview video, because that gives you a broad audience. If I do a preview and only use whale trainers, that's like what, 1% of the game? So
Right.
automatically only 1% can relate. But if you do something where you have like you're using the flats that everyone can level up, everyone has Santa Hogan. They might not have him at 17K, but they got his flat, right? I almost never will put Mem Rock on in a video, even if he's better, because a lot of people more now, right? Recently, there's
Right.
been more, but still, I would use Gunther instead, probably, because a lot of people got him for free, Zombie Gunther, because that was the choice a lot of people got if I had to pick. Yeah, right? Uh-huh.
Yep. Both of us.
See? Yeah. And so it's just trying to use less good options that are still good that people can relate to. Try and keep
Right.
like a 5% strap on, and then tell people like, hey, if you got a 50% strap, you can expect maybe this much more damage, or just
Right.
run it without, and try to run. If I use a skill plate now, and I might not have always done this, I can't remember, but now I try to, if I'm going to run a skill plate, I often in my previews will say like, okay, I run it without the skill plate, and I'll say, okay, this is my first time running it with the skill plate. If it's a rare one, let's see how hard it hits, right? Because not everyone is going to have the plate, but here's how hard it'll hit without it. This is how hard it'll
Right.
hit with it. And that takes a lot more time. And you guys know I don't like cherry pick, because I've gotten mad a few times prior to being a content creator where I feel like, okay, they had to have recorded a ton of stuff to show me this, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if it might take a little longer, but I fill it up with a bunch of nonsense because I like to run my mouth, as you guys are finding out.
No, you're good.
Right.
You're good. This is why we have you on here. And I mean, part of like what you're talking about there, like for our journey, I think the two things that brought us to the dance is the longest and the shortest things we do. The
Yep.
podcast
Yeah.
and the 3 minute move
3 minute
sets. Like
movie.
they're
Yeah.
literally those are the two things. And I've shared this before, you know, on the pod here before. But the 3 minute move sets actually was something that rose out of an idea I had because I was watching one of your streams. I think it was Braun, I want to say, and you're you know just, oh man, you can run them so many different ways. And I'm actually quite the opposite in my play style. I want the character to have one really good thing they do, maybe
Hmm.
two, and that's it, because there's 500 characters and 7,000 different combinations and blah blah. And so for me, I was like, okay, I'm literally never going to run Braun anything other than triple red. Why isn't there a video that someone just says just run triple red when I need like just one thing? And then, you know, you talk about the evergreen content. Part of what the 3 minute move sets are for us is when there's Acro Bailey, you know, that's
Right. Yeah.
required, and you're like, I haven't used her for 6 years. What does she
Exactly.
do now?
Hmm.
You just go to a 3 minute move set and boom, there it is. So
Yep.
not replacing by any means, you know, what
Right.
the official, well,
Just
we're
something
official now,
else.
what the other content creators are doing, but just supplementing it with like, hey,
Yeah.
here's a quick hit. Like you just need this for today. Go, you know?
100%. And that's, I think, so like I and sometimes it may sound like I would tell everybody, honestly, the more content you watch, the better, right? Like, so
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I have a specific style, right? I'm very safe. I
Mhm.
play characters way safer than most people will, because I hate random chance hosing me, right? Like, I want consistent, safe, and hit hard enough, right? But
Trikoska. Whoops. I mean, no, not her.
yeah, exactly. Cannot stand her. Boom or bust is not my thing, you know?
Yeah.
But there are some characters that you can, if you want to see how to get the most out of them, like in some situations where you're okay with it random kicking in, I am not your guy. You know what I mean? Like, I am
Right.
not the most creative, entertaining guy. Like, I'm not gonna show you, like, I can see the value of showing you how hard a guy can hit on a tour, right? Because it's fun and games should be fun. So don't ever think, like, for people listening, if I'm saying like I didn't see videos that had stuff I liked, it's because I'm really vanilla and plain Jane in this game. It's just really cold hard. Like, I want this consistent so I know what to expect. Because there's enough
Right.
random stuff that makes me irritated. I don't want it to irritate me when I'm trying to win and feud quickly or something, for example. Right. So, um, and you can learn so much, even if it's what not to do, including from watching me like miss swipe all the time. Like, you can learn just as much sometimes by what not to do by watching videos. So there's almost always something useful to take, and there's different
Yeah.
styles and, you know, different thought patterns. So like, I would encourage people, like, don't like, if you like my play style and video style, that's awesome, watch it, I appreciate it so much, but don't think like that's the only thing you should watch because I'm always right, because I mess up all the
Yeah.
time, I miss stuff, right? And that's why, like, it's awesome you guys are coming in, right? Like, because, and also, you guys know how, like, you guys remember when like Tiger Woods came onto the PGA Tour, he drove the ball farther than everyone else, and now he doesn't, right? Like,
Yeah.
people catch up. That's how it is.
Right.
Like competition, and it's not even competition, because I'm always looking at it like I'm only competing against myself. I'm trying to do the best video I can do and get better
Yeah.
at what I do. But
Right.
if you see somebody doing really good stuff and you're like, man, I could be doing better, I'm not working as hard as I can. So now I work a little harder. I work on my stuff, right? Like, and then you work on, oh, look at what Mherex did. That's a good idea. But what if I did it this way instead? Now you're doing more stuff. It just, creativity breeds creativity. That's probably the best part about streaming. And because you hear, well, did you try this? Try this. And like all
Right.
these ideas come, and you can take what you like, what fits your style, adapt it. And the sharing of ideas in general, I think, is one of the things. And then, like, deep down, like I said, I got super invested in this game. I love the base game. Like, when the game stays out of its own way,
Right.
it's one of the funnest things I like to do. Like,
Right.
still, when it's good,
Yeah.
it's like wrestling. When it's good, it is as good a game as there is. When it's bad,
Yeah.
it's really bad, right? And
Right.
it can be frustrating because, I mean, like, so many hours, time, effort, right? Like, so, I mean, and I try to, I'll never sugarcoat anything. Like, I try to be very blunt. If I don't like something, I'm going to tell you. If I like it, I'm going to tell you, right? Like, and there's a lot of really good things about the game. There's a
Right.
lot of not such good things, and there's a lot of stuff in the middle, right? And
Yeah.
I think the important thing with content is, either maybe you're an entertainer, maybe you're trying to help somebody learn, but if you enjoy what you're doing, people will probably enjoy watching it.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing. I mean, I've mentioned on a couple of the videos I've done with my roster flashback is I just use the phrase I've disproportionately loved this game for a long time. Like
Right?
I play Final Fantasy VII is the only other game that I would say I've played as long or has been invested in, and the other one would be Destiny. I actually played since
Sure.
the alpha, and same thing. Like Destiny has probably got the best shooter mechanic in the genre, but sometimes it gets in its own way. You know, so there's
Yeah.
times where the game is really good, and there's times where, like right now, the community's up at arms about some things, and you know, it's just that's kind of the life cycle of a game. So in the good times, you enjoy them, and in the lean times, you know you prepare. Like I was a commission
Yeah.
salesman for years and years and years, and that was all you did. In the good times, you enjoyed it, and in the lean times, you made sure you were good for when the good times came back.
All right.
That's you know, it's kind of it. So Rusty, you've got some questions, and then we're going to hit some WWE TV.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it would be, I would be, I'd have regrets if we let Mherex come on today and not at least talk about what I think is one of the more interesting things that he's been doing lately is his free to play project, because I think it's, in some sense, it's sparked a revolution, and if not a revolution, a re-evaluation of what it looks like at the lower tiers of the game for new players, the frustration, the reality of how frustrating it is to get started. So Mherex, we'd love to hear, you know, what, how is the free to play experiment, the project going, and what kind of takeaways are you have you really gleaned from that?
That's a really good question. So, if I don't know, like, I've been talking about doing this for a very long time, like years ago, even I was talking, when you remember when Outlaw PD, do you guys know Outlaw PD? Maybe you didn't hear about him. He had a second account that he played free to play. I am not the originator of a free to play experiment, by the way. Outlaw PD did this like 2, 3 years ago. And at the time he was doing it, I thought it was a really good idea and super cool. And I'm like, man, I would like to do that. I just don't think I can squeeze the time in right now. And it's really sat around in the back of my head for a long time. He eventually quit doing it. I think he might have walked away from champs. I think he's back now. And he said, he actually commented on one of my videos that it's kind of rekindling him, and he might start it up again, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like full circle, because the guy who I saw do it first, you know, is now seeing me do it, and he kind of wants to do it again, sort of thing. So, but
That's
shout out to
awesome.
Outlaw PD, because that was years ago he was doing that, right? Like, and that's pretty original content. So that's not a Mherex original at all. Um,
But it does prove one thing: everybody always comes back to the game. How many times do people say I'm retiring,
yes.
and then a month later you're like, "What? Weren't you
We're
just?"
yeah.
Shout
The
Just
out
when
to
two
I
Nate
think
Dogg
I'm
eight
out.
thirty
it,
three. Just found out he's back in
the
the game. You know,
two
things like that.
the two favorite things I hear is, I'm retiring. Okay, I'll talk to me in 2 months, you know, if you're
Right.
still gone. And the other thing is, I'm not spending on this event. and then you see they got the weekend character, and you're like, yeah, how many pulls was that?
Right.
Yeah, I never believe either of those two things when somebody says them. You show me, if you want me to believe that, you show me a screenshot with 2 minutes left where you still haven't done the one single pull for the bonus points. Then I'll believe you. And okay, so yeah, I want to start with that and shout out Outlaw PD. I am completely out of touch prior to this with a new player, a non-spender. I can say in my videos, like, I like to pretend this is a build that a free-to-play can run. I'll flat out tell you, I can't run a new player build on a preview. They don't have straps, they don't have any trainers, right? So as far as free to play, I can use characters if you've been playing a long time, you have, right? Like Matt, if you've been playing and didn't miss any days, you have Matt. But if you weren't on during that phase, you don't have Matt. um you know, if you didn't play the weekend of Bulldog, you didn't get Bulldog free, right? If you had other obligations. So well, yes, they might be free to play. Nothing like is necessarily for sure. And then there's so many variables, right? You get lucky on a key pull, you get lucky on a free pull, you never know what you're going to get. You get a bag pull like me. It's kind of ridiculous. I pulled Tech Rock on this event.
You did. Oh, I thought you were going to refer to when you got both Steiner brothers, and I was
No,
jumping up and down, going, "Come
yeah.
on!"
You guys, if you watch the Tech Rock preview, I said he's amazing, probably best tech in the game, and I don't care because he's a zero shard release. And that's how I feel about zero shard releases, because I won't spend for a chance to pull a mega the featured because I know what the odds are. I simply won't. And that's nothing against someone that wants to, right? That's just, I'm not going to do it. And I assume I will never get those zero shard releases. That's just my assumption. That's how I go with it. And I think a
Right.
lot of the community feels that way.
No, I agree. And I think, one of the things when you've said on the stream, I look back to my days in the Pearl when I was a lower level player, things like that. And you say that, and I'm like, well, to me, every weekend character is a zero shard release because I'm not shard recruiting that character hardly ever. It's pull or nothing for a
Right.
large part of the community. Now in the Toxic Mafia with having these things
Yep.
like, I'm only a couple hundred shards away from Zombie Sammy, for example. I still
Exactly.
didn't get him even with that 100
But
bonus, but now I can shard
right.
recruit him at some point. But for most players, I think they're kind of boomer bust for a large part of the
Yeah.
game, I would say.
And that is the benefit if you pull and you're missing almost everybody in the featured. Then if you hit a featured, you actually get something good. So the best time to pull is when you don't have a lot of people. The worst time to pull is in a case like mine, which is why you hear me say I don't pull. If I'm only missing the featured or one other superstar, odds of me hitting it are slim to none. It's almost like throwing my money away, basically. But if I buy a shard deal and I get 100 guaranteed shards on somebody I'm 100 shards away from, I just recruited somebody, right? So it makes sense because I know what I'm getting. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Back to the free to play. I have no real had it, I was out of touch with a huge portion of the community, right? And I don't like that because I want to make content that's useful for people. So it does multiple things. One, helps get me in touch. Two, I haven't started the game in forever. So what does it even look like anymore for a new player? And now maybe I can help newer players because, hey, here's a video that says, if you're new to the game or Mherex is starting out a new video and they just started, maybe they Google new to champions or something or YouTube it, right? And maybe it can help them because there's a lot of stuff you don't know about this game when you start. Like, you don't know almost all of it, and there's so much. We've been playing for years. Think about even when like straps launched and medals, people panicked. They didn't know what to do. I'm never going to use a strap, I'm never going to equip a medal. And then like I know you guys remember people saying that, and I made a video at the start of that saying, look, do not have that mentality. The sooner you get on board, that is going to put you ahead of the game, right? The changes, you got to embrace changes in this game. Every time there's a big change, that's a chance for you to improve when other people are staying stagnant, right? Adapt or die basically is the whole life cycle of this game. And
Yeah.
the sooner you do that, the easier it is for you. And I feel like the free to play thing, it brings, as a bonus to me, it brings people that wouldn't probably other watch my stuff to my stuff, so that actually helps me that way. But I found the thing that keeps me on on Champions, because I played this game. I get bored really easy, guys. Like, I like challenges for sure. And I kind of like, as far as where my roster is, the superstars I have, no, I mean, in feud, I one click with Taker for 19 million damage. Just one click and it's 19 million damage. That's not that's not hard. I mean, it's so like,
You can play my account for a feud and
yeah.
see. I mean, I got a few tricks, but otherwise, you're like, oh,
I'll give you a real challenge.
But the danger is you completely lose touch with reality.
Yeah.
Because this is my reality. So I have when you guys see me rank characters, like at the end of a preview video, I have to like, when people are like, how can he say this character is worse than this one? It's a lot of times it's easy, how easy they are to use, like, so how fast they are, how easy, and then how safe. They just need to do enough damage. I don't need a hit for 100 million with KO, right? When 30 million with Sammy wins faster and fewer clicks, and there's no random chance, right? Like, and by Sammy I mean like Striker Sammy. I'm just using an example. Right? Yeah. Powerhouse Sammy, I can probably hit for 20 mil guaranteed too, but that's beside the point, right? So that's how if you're listening to like rankings, that's how I rank them, is try to do it that way. But again, that's not valid for most people, right? If you don't have somebody that can win easy, a slower stun lock guy that Mherex said isn't good is the way to go, because you don't eat your health packs. You know what I mean? Like, so everyone is at this different stage in the game, and I feel like I am up in this spot where it's just not relevant to a lot of people. And I need to be constantly reminded of that. Free to play helps a ton with that, right?
Yeah.
And so does streaming. It helps keep you in touch with real players, right? Like with the majority of the community. So to me, that's, and if I can help people, that's even better, right? Because I really like I coached football, high school football for a while before I came out here where I live now with Mrs. Mherex and stuff. I like coaching, I like teaching. It's weird because I'm a huge introvert. I love people, but I don't like being around them. And like, I can want to help somebody, right, without wanting to be their friend, because I don't want to have to talk to them, because I'm very like, no, I mean, I'm really weird that way. Yeah, I'm all these different things. So internet is great because I can just turn it off, right? Like, you can't my online friends, they're not like calling me, right? Like, I just turn Discord off, right? Like, so that's the great thing about text. It's not intrusive. Where a phone call, you gotta completely, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm all over the place, but so the free to play also gives me a challenge, and there's nothing in the game anymore really that is. So this weekend boss battle is a great point. I just saved my tokens, haven't leveled up any of my ladies to 6-star silver. Prior to this, I don't have a single one. Haven't struggled in any events, have found no reason to do it. I saved my tokens. I don't upgrade someone to 6-star silver until I have at least 20. So if it's an acro, if I don't have 20 tokens, I've waited. When I get 20 tokens, I'll take one so I have 10 left. Because if I get that one that I'm like, this is my favorite right now, I'm taking it right away, right? That's my thought process. If there's a lady boss battle, I'm taking them all. So what did I do? I took Zombie Liv, Shotzi, what's her face, Cora, and Zombie Becky, all to 6-star silver. Is this boss battle going to be hard for me? No. Right? But that's, so see what I mean by like challenges? Like, when you get to the point where my main roster is at on this game, everything is, I have 2.5 billion coin, I think, today. I mean, like, over 100,000 each TP color. It just takes I don't have to worry about what I'm doing. I don't really have to think. I'll just, oh, it doesn't matter if I mess up, right? It's just no consequence. Oh, well, I just throw a little bit of coin away. I'll get more tomorrow. Oh, I got plenty. So
I mean, that's been a big shift for me too. I mean, I've spent, especially to get Zombie Bianca this last Spring Outbreak and Apollo. And I mean, I rode that and got to 1 billion coins the first time ever. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then one of the videos I just did, now it's multiple talents up ago. It would have been last talent up. The whole hook of the video was, what does it look like to spend 1 billion coins on talent up? Because I had enough, I could do it. And And that's just like, I mean, a year,
Wild.
2, 3 years ago, I'd have been like, how could you even imagine that? Well, it was $300 that I spent to get Apollo, you know, and
Yeah,
it's,
right.
I mean, that's no secret. Like I said, here's what I did. Like, I can't do that most months, but I did those 2 months and
Yep.
I got a cash flow from it or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
anyway,
And so like I said, like it just I feel like I really out of touch with the community and in general most of the game, and I feel like the free to play helps with that, and it gives me a challenge. And
yeah,
like I mean, I don't know if it makes a difference like to Scopely or not, but there's that new 4.99 offer, 14.99 offer. I definitely called out some really sketchy offers in my opinion that were
saw
there.
that.
Yeah, and now there's
Old
better
Showboat
offers.
Undertaker, not new Showboat
Right,
Undertaker. Yeah,
right. And the $100 offer for like all these free ones that they're gonna get free, that made me
right,
upset. Like, so
right.
that was
But they
actually,
listened. I mean,
yeah,
somewhat, whether that was because of
somebody
you or what, it
maybe
doesn't matter.
it's
They listened.
changed. Right. The
Yeah,
important thing
it's
is it's
different.
changed, which
Yeah,
is good. And I think one thing is I can be very hard on Scopely, as you guys know, but I also think I will happily talk about when they do stuff good as well because I
right.
like the game. Those are good offers.
Yeah,
And
really good.
if they did listen, props to them, right? And if it just happened anyway, also props to them. But
Right.
I do, a lot of people think like Scopely is out to screw them, and to me that's ridiculous because they're
Yeah,
like if you're a business, you never want to screw over your customers. Like just think about it rationally, and they're not
right,
bad. Whatever you say about them, they're not bad business people. They're one of the most successful mobile developers around. They
right.
know they understand business, so I don't think they're ever deliberately trying to screw us. I think mistakes happen, and I think they're called mistakes for a reason. Do they happen
Right.
too much for me or you? Maybe, sure. But at the end of the day, the game is about fun, and as long as I'm having enough fun, I'm going to keep playing,
Yeah,
and keep smashing gems. So that to be fair, like I said, I've never played a game this long. I think I'm at like close to 6 years, 5 years, 6 years.
yeah.
I've never even come like the longest would have been, I mean, off and on World of Warcraft. I probably played 3 4 years off and on, like 6 months at a time. But
Right.
a straight up more than a year, maybe EverQuest, way back when I was young and had more time. I don't think I've ever
Nice.
came close to playing anything. Oh, Lord of the Rings Online, where I met Mrs. Mherex, we probably played a year and a half or 2 years. But yeah.
What about Magic? Were you ever into Magic? I think I've talked a little bit. I've played Magic
Magic the Gathering.
pretty faithfully since about 1997.
So
Wow.
yes, I am one of those people that dives into things, obsesses about them, and does them. I think maybe I'm a little bit mildly on the spectrum, to be honest.
Hmm.
But that doesn't really
My
matter.
wife and son are. So if you ever want to talk about that, I have some really interesting things I've learned. We just got Logan diagnosed a few months ago. My wife's undiagnosed, but she sat alongside my son during the testing. Let's just say.
Yeah, I've
So
I've I've taken the testing, and it's no guarantee because a lot of times when
right.
you're a big introvert with social anxiety, which I've talked about that on stream too, is a lot of those markers can match over, but like so I have obviously no problem talking, as you guys can see.
Yeah.
I can be very charismatic in person, but like I don't it's hard for me to look people in the eyes, like which is a common marker. Like I'll stare at your like eyebrows, your nose, there's ways around. Yeah, there's definitely ways around it. I struggle with sudden change, even small
Mm,
sudden change, right? Like I
yeah.
I like my things all in the same spot all the time where they are, so I know where they are. If I have something planned and it's a slight deviation, okay, what went wrong with the plan, right? So weird little things like that
Right.
that I think makes me on there, and I've totally forgot what we were talking about. It's the first time. Can you put me back on what were we talking about before that? Oh,
Well, we
magic.
were finishing up your
Yes.
free to play conversation and being relatable to the community.
And then Rusty asked me about magic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. So
Yeah. Forgive me.
anyway, I jump in and out of stuff, obsess about it, then get bored with it, drop it. So for some reason, growing up in Minnesota, small dinky town, I get bored. I'm like maybe early 20s at this point. For some reason, I decide I want to play Magic the Gathering. Couldn't tell you why. I for work I drive about an hour to an hour and a half every day and frame basements in as a carpenter, like just finish basements, and that's what I do for work, right? Back then. And then I decide I'm gonna drive home through St. Cloud, which is an hour and a half out of my way, stop at the card shop and see if people play Magic there. And they play Magic, and so I sit down and I watch, and then I'm like, I want to play Magic. And they're like, we'll buy a starter deck. So I buy a starter deck and play some Magic. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like cards. This is fun. And then I realized there's all these different decks from in the past that I'm never gonna know. So, but there's a new block called Onslaught Block, and it's just came out. And so I buy these Onslaught cards, and there's this cycling thing in it where you can cycle and get more cards. And I'm like, I hate random. Even back then, this is consistent. If I don't have what I need, I can pay resources and get it. So I'm having fun. I start playing this thing. I'm winning more than I'm losing. I'm like, this is really fun. So I get into it more, and I'm adjusting my deck and all this stuff. I'm like, well, this is really cool. Just Onslaught Block, just these new cards. I can focus on this. So I'm going 5 days a week, and I go and I play for 6 hours after work, and then I drive home, go to sleep, go to work, drive there. Like, I do this for like 3 months, and then I say I want to play in a tournament, and they're like, okay, well, there's a tournament in Detroit. Let's go to that. So I go, and I like go like 50-50, nothing great, and I'm like really mad because I'm competitive. Right. So I'm like, okay, I'm playing more. I'm thinking about it. I start like trying. Internet's not as big a deal then as it is now, but I try to do some research on my 56K modem at home because we lived in the country, so I couldn't get anything good. Do you imagine playing MMOs on a 56K? That's what I was doing back then. It was
You've
horrible.
got mail.
Oh, don't do that. No. So, like 2 months from then, there's a Pro Tour qualifier in Kansas City. I'm in Minnesota. I just decide I'm gonna drive to it. A couple people from the shop are like, "Can we ride with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I'm like preparing, getting ready. I'm playing the control decks are slow-ish. So Goblin is my hardest deck to beat. Rush Goblins. So I play Goblin decks nonstop because I know I can beat almost everything. So they're playing their Goblin decks, and I'm playing that. And like I put in this really crappy card. Everyone says it's terrible. It's called Searing Flesh. It's like 7 mana and does like 8 damage to target player or creature. It's 7 or 8 mana for 8 damage. It's terrible, right, Rusty? That's not a good card.
Bad, yeah, expensive, and it's like a high MP poster in Champions. Yeah, just
terrible.
Forever to load. Roman Juggernaut kind of poster.
Yep. So I have this in my sideboard, and because I'm convinced it's really good. I know in my heart it's good, even though everyone tells me it sucks. I know I can make this work. So I have it in my sideboard. Whenever I don't play a Goblin deck after I win the first match, I sideboard it in, and I find out like, okay, because we're playing like tournament rules. I'm pretending like I don't know what they have right at the shop, and so because we all want to do well at the tournament, and I start every time I sideboard it in, I win. Like with it just does really good. I finish people off with it. So I'm like, okay, but they're all telling me it's terrible. They've been playing for years. So I leave it in the sideboard. So we go to the tournament in Kansas City. I play, I make it to the final match. I sideboard in Searing Flesh every time it's not a Goblin deck. The first time I beat somebody with it, he literally sits there, takes his hat off, staring at the board. This is the worst card I've ever been beat with in my life. I swear to God, that's what he said, Rusty. I swear. This is the worst card I've ever been beat with in my life. I'm like, yeah, it works, right? So I get to the final match, and this is, keep in mind, my first, what I would call real tournament. The other one was just to see what it was about. And the guy's like, I'll give you them because you get like 200, I think it was like $200, a box of Magic cards, and then your Pro Tour voucher to go play at the Pro Tour in,
Wow.
it was in Louisiana that year, New Orleans. And he's like, I'll just give you everything if you give me the win. And I was like, well, this is my first tournament. This is really fun. I want to keep playing tournaments. So, okay, yeah, you can have the win. I'll take the stuff. Because the next day, I think it was in Missouri, there was another Pro Tour qualifier. So I drive all night. I take the stuff, take the money, take the cards, drive all night to the next Pro Tour qualifier, get there, haven't slept, and I say, screw it, I'm playing my deck. Searing Flesh is main boarded. I don't care if it's goblins or not. I'm putting it in my main board. I'm not even sideboarding it. So I put it in, get my deck ready, and I lose one match the whole time. Just one, not even not a full set, Rusty, just one game. I lose one game the whole time. And
wow.
I'm destroying people with searing flesh over and over and over. And do you remember wing shards too, Rusty? If they
Yeah.
cast a spell and then they attack, they have to sacrifice an attacking creature plus one for every spell they cast that turn. So that is my defense against goblins, and it's only 3 mana. So what I would do to screw with people's heads is I would separate my mana, and I'd have 3 left untapped all the time, whether I had wing shards or not. So now they're like, oh, does he have wing shards? He saved the mana for it. Do I attack? Do I not attack? You know, right? So I played that as smart and as dirty as I could, like, so they never knew what I had. And the thing is, when it's your turn, before it's your turn, before the cycle, before the thing resets, you can cycle all of your cards through. So you constantly have the answers you need in your hand once you know their deck and stuff. So that's why I liked it so much. So, but I got deck checked like 6 times. They made me change sleeves 3 times. They were convinced I was like cheating because I was destroying everybody. This guy's playing me with his goblin deck. He's the one that beat me the first time. Second time through, like, so he's won the first one. Second time through, I got my wing shard separated out, and he's like all shaking because he can't decide if he wants to attack or not. He knocks his deck off the table, and he's like, oh man, he's like, you're gonna DQ me. I'm like, no, pick it up, I'm gonna win anyway. Like, just totally. I didn't call a judge over. Like, yeah, I'm like, it doesn't matter, I'll beat you anyway. Like, just because I don't want to win that way. Like, I'm like in football competitive mode. I'm competing, right? I'm gonna win. That's how I look at it. So yeah, when you ask if I play Magic, yeah. So anyway, long story short, I win that one, right? Go back, start practicing. And back then, if you won with a block, you had to play with, like, what do they, I don't even remember what they call it anymore, but it was a section of cards, like, they might not even do it anymore, Rusty. Like, you play from like an era. It wasn't like old school like Mox Diamond and that stuff, but it had like it was in between. It was like basically 12 blocks worth of Magic cards or something like that.
Yeah, that's actually and we can wrap up the Magic talk, but yeah, that's my favorite format. It's called Pioneer, and it's kind of an expanded, like, limited block. Like, you can only play back to a certain point, but you still have to play with newer cards. And but yeah, that's actually probably the most popular format at this point. But
and
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
One of the rare regrets in my life, because my goal was to go to a Pro Tour event. That was my goal. So I qualify and I get to go, and it's in New Orleans, and I've never been to New Orleans. I'm like, well, this is going to be cool, right? Louisiana, New Orleans, like, awesome. I coach football. We make the playoffs. I'm just the line coach, but the playoff is the same weekend the Magic tournament is, and I don't think that's fair to the kids. So yeah, well, that's the regret, is that I didn't actually, not that I would make that decision every time. The regret is, though, that I didn't try to win another Pro Tour qualifier, so I never actually have been to the Pro Tour. I just have won a qualifier, and then I wasted it.
I think that plot line could be a very compelling screenplay and made into a movie where the coach, the coach walks out of the hotel ballroom with his Magic deck in his hand, and he looks at the young inner city teens, and he just says, I choose you. I choose you. We're going to state. I'm not going to play Magic. I choose you. And it's like,
you got to have Mike Birbiglia play Mherex. That's the real clincher to it.
I think this is a really basically could be a sequel to Rudy or something like that. As big, we're talking about the feel good movie of the season. Coach Mherex coming to a theater near you.
Not to put a damper on it, but we lost the game.
It doesn't matter. You stopped the movie. You stopped the movie before they even go play that game.
There you go.
It rolls to credits, and everyone leaves happy.
Wow,
that's awesome. I'd watch it.
That's incredible. Well, let me just say this, not to keep harping on Magic, but I will say this. There have been times on this show where I've kind of got on to members in the community for being salty, and like I liken it to some of those same guys that are flipping tables in the Magic tournaments where they they oh, they nerfed Nakamura, they took back my TP, and they're flipping the tables, and they're so upset, and they want to take their deck and go home, and they're just gonna play quietly at the local shop, and just kind of rue the day.
Then they're gonna come back a month later after they quit the game. But the only thing I can add to this conversation is that my wife really wants me to play Magic. That's like her big thing. And now they have Doctor Who decks in there. She asked for them for Christmas, not because she wants them, because she's convinced she's going to get me into it that way.
Nice. It's fun. I mean, like, there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of mechanics. It's pretty fun. Just saying.
Well, I tell you what, just to honor our time today, we better wrap up. But I tell you what, Mherex, can we have you on again? Like, can we just get maybe a asterisk in this that you're willing to come back at some point?
This has actually been a ton of fun. I'd be happy to.
You heard it.
I'm
gonna hold you to that.
You can. You know how hard it was the first time. Like, I'm just like, and because like, and today we were literally driving so I took my cat to the vet. It's snowing, and then it was really bad. So Mrs. Mherex started going to work, turned around, came home, but it was a little bit better then. So I drove her to work. Right. And as we're driving, because I talked to her earlier about this, I'm like, these guys want me to do their show, and I actually really want to do it, but I don't want to say yes. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if I say yes and then I don't do it, she's like, you're worried they'll think you're a dick? I'm like, no, they know that already. Like, that it's not that. Wow. Like, it's I'm worried that I'll have given them my word and then it didn't work out, and then like I disappointed them or let them down, right? And so we're driving them, and I told her, this is exactly why I don't like saying yes. This is my worst fear come true, because I was like a half hour late from when we planned, right? Because I like being earlier on time. I don't like making people wait. It bothers me to waste people's time, right? So that's why sometimes it's hard for me to say yes. Also, when people really like something, so if a lot of people like this, just so you guys know, if you get a lot of comments and people like it, it'll be harder for me to do it a second time, because I feel like when everyone wants me to do something, I'm one of those people that just doesn't want to go with the flow. You know what? That's why I was good at football. No one's blocking you towards the ball, so I just naturally fight the flow, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was, like, it just, when you're around certain things and like a lot of times saying no is better, you just kind of and then you're just sort of confrontational anyway, because you kind of like it, because you're a little bit of a toxic male in that way, like you want to fight. And I boxed, I played football, I love contact, I like to debate, I like to argue, all those things make me much more like to say no, and that's a thing I have to like work on in general.
Yeah.
But I do want to do this again because it's fun.
Therapist. I have no letters after my name.
Nope.
I have a master's degree. It's not in this. From my wife's and children's experience, look up persistent demand avoidance, or PDA profile.
Oh Lord.
It's part of our experience as well. The more I push my wife to do something, the less likely she is to do it.
Yeah. I mean, no, but that's not, you guys need to ask me, like I think you said, what is it? It's your bi-monthly check-in or something the other day. Did you say something like that? Or something like that? Like, checking in is perfect. Like, that's great. And if I don't, even sometimes, like, I just ignore Discord. Like, if you saw how many unread messages I have, sometimes it's terrible, because sometimes I just can't, like, I need to just take away. Right, because I am that introvert, right? But this is like so much fun, and I miss doing the pod with my buddy Dr. Sparks, and this reminds me so much of that. It's like just talking about the game, having fun. Ridiculous stuff will come up, like you guys open the show with your ridiculous opening. That's like the best. I love that stuff.
My mom had the hots for Shawn Michaels.
Exactly,
and I am not anywhere. I'm still wrestling with that. Tell me about your childhood. My mother was very attracted to Shawn Michaels, and every time he was on TV, she said things, and I was like, I'm not supposed to know about that yet.
Uncomfortable.
I'm picking up my. But
that's awesome.
But yeah, that's a real thing. And can we close out the show with this thought? So when we first started doing the podcast, our tagline was the first and only podcast dedicated to the WWE Champions mobile app, and it was a few people on your your Discord who tagged Dr. Sparks and was like, did you see what these guys were saying? And then David D went, hold on, did you fact check that? Right?
Pause.
Pause. That's right. Because we just didn't look at you. We were looking at like Spotify.
I didn't know. I didn't know.
So
I had no idea.
So we are here to make
it's quite okay. It's quite okay.
We changed that line immediately once we knew.
Yeah, we did.
If it makes you feel better, no one was watching us. There's like 5 people that watched it back then. That's the running joke. We call them the 5. If you look on my server, there's people that have a specific color name. On my server, they're the 5 because it was a running joke we had. There's only like 5 people watching anyway. It doesn't matter what we say.
Right.
And then Two Bob did a podcast, a community lounge podcast for a while too. I think he did 12 or 13 episodes of that. But other than that, I think those are the only 3 I know of. And we used to joke we were the longest running episodic podcast in Champions history, Sparks and I. That was our intro line. It's the longest running episodic podcast in Champions history.
Well, maybe we need to have you on together.
The 4th and only remaining. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. What if we had you guys on together? Wouldn't that be fun? Like a reunion, the Mherex pod reunion.
Sparks would do podcasts with me anytime. He won't stream with me. It annoys me so much. I'm like, dude, just come on stream. He's like, no, I'm not here to amuse them. I'm here to amuse me.
Well, open invite to Champions Chat.
That's
it's a community-based podcast. You come take it over one week or something. Who knows?
One thing we need to, out of courtesy, Mherex, we want to make sure, please tell us, how can we find your content? How can we follow you? How can we how can we subscribe? What should we be doing? Every content creator needs to have an opportunity to plug their thing. So we want to make sure we give you that opportunity.
Even when they're the ones that inspired us and they're massively, more popular than us.
I know.
But still, take that moment.
Let's assume someone is like, what?
So you would probably look up Mherex Gaming on YouTube or Twitch. Perfect. Just look up Mherex Gaming. I don't think there's anyone else posing under that moniker at the moment.
Nice.
There's
also,
this guy not Mherex around here I saw, and Mherex FTP, and I don't know what those are. But
also, there's rumors sometimes Cable shows up, and I don't know if you guys know about Cable, but you don't want that.
For the next podcast, that we could start there.
I don't know if Furpo would like that, but that's okay. He doesn't. So full disclosure, he doesn't watch a lot of what we do. He'll probably not hear this, so we can do whatever we want.
And if we whisper it at a certain decibel level, he's not even capable of physically hearing it.
Right. He's hard of hearing, I've been told. No.
Wow. Well, on that note, I just want to thank you for being on the podcast. This has been incredible. It's been a while coming. We appreciate you taking the time. It really means a lot. And we said it at the start, but just to say it again, just like you have your story with Davey, and Davey was a big part of us building this and stuff too. Professor, Iron Sheik, but we watched you and Gerson before we knew anybody else existed. So you're a big reason why we play this game, why we know what we're doing, and so thank you. Like, that legitimately means a lot. And to anybody listening in the community, as we always do, I just want to say it's an honor to be alongside you. We appreciate you. Enjoy the sensational Sherry event, which is probably over by the time this posts, but that's okay. And enjoy smashing gems together.
That's awesome. That means a lot, dude. Like, that's humbling, really. So thank you. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you guys.